The invitation arrived on cream-colored cardstock, embossed with gold lettering that caught the afternoon light streaming through Margaret's kitchen window. She held it with trembling fingers, reading the elegant script for the third time. "Are cordially invited to celebrate the engagement of Sarah Elizabeth Chun and Michael Harrison Davies. To her daughter's name. Her daughter's engagement party." And at the bottom, in smaller print that felt like a slap across the face, "Adults only. Intimate gathering." Margaret sank into her worn kitchen chair, the same one where she'd helped Sarah with countless homework assignments, where they'd shared late-night conversations about boys and dreams and fears. 27 years of motherhood. And this is what it had come to, a formal invitation to her own daughter's engagement party, with the clear message that her presence was more obligation than desire. The phone rang, piercing through her stunned silence. "Mom?" Sarah's voice was bright, artificially cheerful. "Did you get the invitation?" "I did." Margaret's voice came out smaller than she intended. "Great. So, it's next Saturday at Michael's parents' place in Westchester. 7 o'clock. You know how to get there, right? I can text you the address." The casualness of it stung worse than outright cruelty would have. "Sarah, when did you and Michael get engaged?" "You didn't tell me." A pause. "Oh, right. Yeah, it happened last week. At that restaurant you probably wouldn't know Lee Bernard in. Michael had the whole thing planned out. It was perfect." Le Bernardine. Margaret knew it while she'd worked double shifts at the diner for months to pay for Sarah's college application fees, dreaming of the day her daughter might dine at places like that. She'd never imagined she'd be hearing about it secondhand. "That's wonderful, sweetheart. I'm so happy for you." The words came automatically, honed by decades of putting Sarah's happiness before her own hurt. "Thanks. Oh, and Mom, maybe, don't wear that blue dress. The one you wore to my graduation. Michael's family is pretty, image conscious." After Sarah hung up, Margaret sat in the gathering dusk of her small apartment, surrounded by the photos that chronicled their life together. Sarah's first day of school, gap-toothed and beaming. Sarah at her high school graduation, valedictorian. Margaret bursting with pride in that blue dress, the one she'd saved up for 3 months to buy. Sarah at college, then law school, each photo showing her daughter growing more polished, more confident, and somehow more distant. Margaret picked up a photo from Sarah's law school graduation. She remembered that day with crystal clarity how Sarah had rushed through their lunch together, checking her phone constantly, mentioning new friends with names like the Harrisons and the Chans, and how they were all going to celebrate at some exclusive club later. Margaret hadn't been invited to that celebration either. Asterisk. She thought about all the sacrifices. Working 2 jobs to pay for Sarah's private school, when the public school guidance counselor suggested Sarah was gifted. Selling her mother's engagement. Ring to help with college expenses. Moving to this smaller apartment so she could afford Sarah's law school loans. Every decision made with Sarah's future in mind. Every personal dream deferred for her daughter's success. And now Sarah was marrying. Into money. Into a world when Margaret's blue dress wasn't good enough, where her small apartment and working class accent were embarrassments to be managed, rather than bridges to be honored. The week passed slowly. Margaret found herself standing in front of her closet, staring at the blue dress Sarah had dismissed. It was a good dress, well made, purchased with such hope and pride. She remembered the salesperson complimenting her choice, how she'd felt beautiful and dignified wearing it to Sarah's graduation. But she also remembered the look on Sarah's face when she'd seen her at the law school ceremony, a brief flash of something that might have been embarrassment before Sarah composed herself and made introductions to her new friends. "This is my mother," she'd said, the words somehow carrying an apology within them. Saturday arrived grey and drizzly. Margaret, dressed carefully, choosing a simple black dress she'd bought for church functions. Conservative, unremarkable, invisible. She practiced her smile in the mirror, preparing to be gracious and grateful for whatever scraps of attention came her way. The Harrison estate was everything she'd expected, and more manicured lawns, circular driveway, the kind of house that whispered old money and privilege. Margaret parked her 15-year-old Honda between a BMW and a Mercedes, feeling like an intruder. The front door was answered by a woman in an expensive suit who looked her up and down with barely concealed assessment. "You must be Sarah's mother. I'm Patricia Harrison, Michael's mother. How lovely to finally meet you." The emphasis on finally wasn't lost on Margaret. She followed Patricia through rooms filled with tasteful art and flower arrangements that probably cost more than Margaret's monthly rent. The other guests were clusters of well-dressed people holding wine glasses and speaking in the modulated tones of the educated wealthy. Margaret accepted a glass of wine and found a corner where she could observe. She watched Sarah work the room. Like the accomplished lawyer she'd become, confident and poised in a way that made Margaret's heart swell with pride even as it ached with recognition. This was no longer the little girl who used to crawl into bed with her during thunderstorms. "Mum!" Sarah appeared at her elbow, looking beautiful in a dress that probably cost more than Margaret made in a month. "You made it. How's the drive?" "Fine, honey. You look absolutely radiant." Margaret meant it. Sarah did look radiant, glowing, with happiness and success. "Thanks. Listen, I want you to meet some people." Sarah's hand was already guiding her toward a group near the fireplace. "Everyone, this is my mother, Margaret. Mom, these are Michael's colleagues from the firm." The introductions were polite but perfunctory. Margaret found herself nodding and smiling as the conversation quickly returned to topics she couldn't contribute to: vacation homes in the Hamptons, wine tastings in Napa, children at prep schools she'd never heard of. She excused herself to find the bathroom, needing a moment to collect herself. The powder room was larger than her kitchen, stocked with expensive soaps and monogrammed towels. In the mirror, she saw a middle-aged woman in a discount dress, looking exactly like what she was: a working-class mother trying to fit into a world that didn't want her. Asterisk. When she returned, she couldn't find Sarah anywhere. The party had moved toward the dining room, where an elaborate buffet was being served. Margaret filled a plate with food she didn't recognize and found a seat at one of the smaller tables, relegated to the overflow seating while Sarah held court. At the main table with Michael's family and their friends, she watched her daughter laugh at jokes she couldn't hear, saw her gesture animatedly while telling stories that probably didn't include memories of their small apartment or Margaret's double shifts or the nights they'd eaten mac and cheese for dinner because it was all they could afford. "Excuse me. Are you Margaret?" She looked up to find an elderly woman with kind eyes and a warm smile. "I'm Eleanor Chun, Sarah's future grandmother-in-law. May I sit?" "Of course." Margaret was grateful for the company. Eleanor settled beside her with a slight wince. "These parties are exhausting at my age. I much prefer quiet conversations to all that ... She waved toward the main table. "Performance." They sat in comfortable silence for a moment, watching the festivities. Then Eleanor spoke again. "Sarah talks about you, you know." Margaret's heart lifted slightly. "She does?" "Oh yes. She told me how you worked 2 jobs to put her through school. How you never missed a parent-teacher conference or school play, even when you were exhausted. How you taught her to be strong and independent. Eleanor paused, studying Margaret's face. She also told me she's been afraid she's disappointing you. Disappointing me? Margaret couldn't hide her surprise. How could she disappoint me? She's everything I dreamed she could become. Eleanor nodded thoughtfully. Success can be lonely. Dear, sometimes when we climb high enough, we're afraid to look down, worried we won't like what we see, or that what we see won't like us back. Before Margaret could respond, the sound of clinking glasses filled the room. Michael was standing, preparing to make a toast. The room quieted as he spoke about love and partnership, and the future he and Sarah would build together. Then Sarah stood, beautiful and confident, to respond. Asterisk. I want to thank everyone for being here tonight, she began, her voice carrying clearly across the room. Michael and I are so grateful for all the love and support. Her eyes found Margaret across the room, and something shifted in her expression. But before I go any further, I need to say something important. The room remained silent, waiting. I almost made a terrible mistake tonight. I almost let this evening pass without acknowledging the person who made everything I am possible. Sarah's voice grew stronger, more certain. My mother is here tonight, and I need everyone to know that every achievement I've celebrated, every success I've earned, exists because of her sacrifice and love. Margaret felt the attention of the room shift to her, but Sarah wasn't finished. She worked 2 jobs so I could go to private school. She sold her mother's engagement ring to help pay for college. She moved to a smaller apartment to help with my law school expenses. She never missed a single important moment in my life, even when it meant missing sleep or meals or her own needs. Sarah's voice began to break slightly, and tonight, I was so worried about fitting in that I almost forgot to honor the woman who taught me what real strength looks like. Sarah moved away from the main table, walking directly to Margaret. The room remained silent as she knelt beside her mother's chair. Mom, I'm sorry. I'm sorry for making you feel like you had to shrink yourself to fit into my new world. I'm sorry for being embarrassed by the very things I should be most proud of. You raised me to be better than that. Margaret reached out to touch her daughter's face, tears flowing freely now. Oh, sweetheart, you don't need to. Yes, I do. Sarah's voice was firm. Everyone here should know that the woman who taught me to work hard, to treat people with dignity, to never give up on my dreams, is sitting right here. And I want her at the main table where she belongs. The room erupted in applause as Sarah helped Margaret to her feet. As they walked together toward the main table, Margaret heard Eleanor Chun's voice carry clearly. Now that's a family to be proud of. The rest of the evening transformed. No longer relegated to the margins, Margaret found herself engaged in real conversations, her perspective valued and her stories welcomed. Michael's father, initially formal and distant, became animated when discussing Margaret's work with at-risk youth through her church. Patricia Harrison, perhaps recognizing genuine grace when she saw it, began asking thoughtful questions about Margaret's life and experiences. But the real change was in Sarah. Gone was the polished lawyer carefully managing impressions. In her place was Margaret's daughter, the girl who used to bring home stray cats and fight for underdogs and dream big dreams while curled up on their small couch. As the evening wound down, Sarah walked Margaret to her car. The rain had stopped, and stars were beginning to appear through the breaking clouds. I've been a terrible daughter lately, haven't I? Sarah's voice was small, vulnerable in a way Margaret hadn't heard in years. You've been finding your way, Margaret replied gently. Sometimes that means making mistakes. It's what happens next that matters. They stood by the Honda, both reluctant to end this moment of reconnection. I want to do better, Mom. I want to be the person you raised me to be, not the person I thought I needed to become. Margaret pulled her daughter close, breathing in. the familiar scent of her hair, remembering all the times she'd held this precious girl through skinned knees and broken hearts and moments of doubt. You were the person I raised you to be, Sarah. You're strong and smart and capable. You just forgot for a while that those things don't require you to leave the best parts of yourself behind. They separated reluctantly, and Sarah wiped her eyes, smearing her perfect makeup in a way that made her look young and real again. When you come to dinner next week? Just us. I want to cook for you, if you can remember how to make that spaghetti sauce you used to make when I was little. Margaret laughed, the sound carrying joy and relief in equal measure. I think I can manage that. But you're buying the wine this time. As Margaret drove home through the quiet suburban streets, she thought about the blue dress hanging in her. Could it be one that had been deemed not quite good enough? Tomorrow, she decided, she would wear it to church. She would wear it with pride, remembering not the dismissal it had received, but the love with which it had been chosen, and the important moments it had witnessed. Her phone buzzed with a text. Message. At the next red light, she glanced at it. I love you, Mom. Thank you for never giving up on me. Sarah, Margaret smiled, tucking the phone away as the light turned green. The road ahead was clear and bright, illuminated by streetlights. And possibility. Behind her, she knew. Her daughter was probably still at the party. That something fundamental had shifted. The distance between them built from misunderstanding, and the fear of not being enough had collapsed in the space of one honest conversation. There would be a wedding to plan, a relationship to rebuild, and new ways of being family to discover. There would be moments of backsliding and growth, of learning to balance Sarah's new world with the values that had shaped her. That tonight, driving through the darkness toward home, Margaret felt something she hadn't experienced in months. Hope. The empty chair at her daughter's table had been filled, not just with her physical presence, but with recognition, respect, and renewed love. The best was yet to come.